Activate your energy.
Welcome to the Activated Authors Podcast, a show where we distill the core principles of what it takes to become a happy, healthy, and productive author, no matter what stage of the journey you're at. I'm your host, Daniel Willcocks. I'm an international best-selling author, as well as an author coach, speaker, and creative entrepreneur. But most importantly, I'm a lifelong student of all things productivity, psychology, and human behavior. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Without further ado, let's dive in. What is up, activators, and welcome to another Ask Me Anything with me, Dan Willcocks, interviewed by the wonderful
me, Sam Frost. Hello.
I know. I really need to work out some sort of like proper intro for these. Like the main episodes, they're so smooth and slick, if I do say so myself. But these are very, very kind of thrown together. But that's the nature of the behind the scenes.
It's a bonus. It's a bonus. Like, it's not supposed to be as slick. And look, give yourself some credit, because you didn't just refer to me as your helper. So we're making steps.
It's all progress. It's all progress. It's all it's about. Marginal gains. How are you doing, Sam?
I'm okay. I'm about to cough, so I'm going to have some water, and then I'll ask you a question. So talk about yourselves.
Yeah. So I'm an Aries.
Well, it was either that or a car analogy. So, like, roll the dice.
I know. I need to figure out, like, to be fair, the more I use that car analogy, the more I like it. But I do feel like I should probably, there's probably something better out there.
I don't mean to just like,
just comedy spray, just clear off your camera. Yeah. But no, for people who,
go on.
I was just saying, for people who are unaware of the car analogy, it's kind of I don't know if people have heard it before, but it's almost like my kind of metaphor for self-publishing and writing and that whole jam that I'm sure that I'll get into again on the podcast at some point. But what were you going to say, Sam?
I was going to say, name me 3 parts of the internal combustion engine.
The internal, like the engine or the parts.
I want to know, name me 3 parts of what's inside the combustion engine of a car.
Oh, that will be the dolphin sprocket, the wormtail bend,
yeah,
and the gasket.
Nice.
Like I could have been a mechanic in Neverland.
Yeah, I feel like you could be a mechanic in just any world where there's magic, where you don't have to be, you can just be like, car fix.
Yeah, but this is why we write and then research in that order.
I'm just going to put dolphin sprocket in square brackets. I'll get back.
The technique, well remembered.
Thank you. But yeah, no, I'm okay. I'm constantly exhausted at the minute, but apart from that, I'm all right. Constantly exhausted, pre-diabetic, anemic, and have been told by my doctor that basically all of my health problems at the minute are to do with the fact that I am really high stress and really high functioning. So that what I need to do is take a break and chill, which I would love to do, right? Yes, please, nom nom nom, give me the break, give me the chill. But I'm a single parent, so like when someone says that, I just go,
yeah.
Okay. I'll see you when I'm full-blown diabetic then, I guess.
Hey, 2 months time.
Yeah, how are you?
Go for a lie down.
Go for a lie down, yeah.
I'm good. I've come back from like 4 days at Chittagong, which has been many things, if not incredible, inspiring, and just harmfully motivating.
Yeah, nothing like being like, motivated. Pain.
Yeah, no, just a fantastic weekend all around that I'm sure I'll go into at some point. But yeah, it's inspiring, but too many things, not enough time.
Well, should we dive into the questions, because that's what we're here for? Right?
Let's rock and roll. Yeah, so the questions sent over by our wonderful Activated Authors community.
Indeed.
Fire away, see what we've got.
So before we do a little graceful Lara Croft swan dive into the questions that we have been sent, I just would like to address, I was going to say the elephant in the room. It's no one's elephant in no one's room, but last AMAs, Number two, Renee had popped a question in the Slack while we were recording, and I had caught it because I'm amazing. And I had brought it up, and then you just really
skirted around it,
answer it. So
absolutely fine.
Yeah. So Renee had said, I'm very late, but in case anyone is monitoring, what is a good per hour rate for ghostwriting? And then after we'd recorded, you popped in the Slack. I realized I didn't answer this on the call, Renee, but I've been anywhere from 0.02 cents to 0.08 cents per word on my contracts. So I thought I would add that in there for anyone that was kind of had listened and been like, for fuck's sake, Dan.
Yeah, where's the answer? Also, just for people watching on YouTube, you'll notice as well that it's just me and Sam tonight. That is purely, again, just to touch on the smaller elephant in the room, purely for scheduling interest at the minute. It's just us two for now, but everyone will be listening and watching this on the replay. Hi guys.
And to address the even smaller elephant in the room, if you can hear
literally smaller elephant, yeah.
I know. If you can hear, let's just grumbles, snores. I was gonna say farts, but they are silent. That's what makes them like so offensive, is that you don't know they're happening. My pug is currently all the way over on that side of the bed, but he's real loud, so you might pick up on
might catch a bit of that, bit of a rumble.
Yeah, I don't have like Eduardo, just he's in the loft. Anyway, so right, first question. Now we've addressed all of the elephants. We've been on a safari. I almost went Andrew Garfield then.
Bring it back.
The first question we've got is from Magellan, and he asks, how long did it take you to develop your confidence as a writer?
It's a really good question. I think it's a really hard one to pinpoint the exact sort of time of my writing, and it's definitely something that fluctuates as we go. I think it ties a little bit into the idea of imposter syndrome. You can have days where you really feel like, you know, your writing's singing and shining off the page, and then the next day you can feel like you can't string a sentence together. It's an ever evolving process. It is a really tough one to answer, because for me, and I have said this a lot in the past on podcasts and things, most of what I write is for myself. And so there's a sense of, as you write, as you edit, giving everything your best. And I feel like there is an innate sense of whether or not your sentences are well constructed, put together in a way that, you know, you are telling a story. In the beginning, it's very difficult to test that barometer, because ultimately, what is good? where does confidence come from? Is it, you know, your own hubris, or is it testified by people in reviews, people who have read your work, peers, critics, that kind of thing? So I think early on, the confidence kind of comes from ego. We've all got enough ego in us, if we're starting to write, to be able to say, okay, I'm capable enough of telling this story. As you begin to work with editors, as you begin to give it to readers and get that feedback, that confidence slowly builds and builds and builds to the point that you get a baseline sense of, okay, I'm an okay writer, I'm a good writer, whatever that is. But, you know, project to project, you never truly know until you start getting that feedback. And the interesting thing as well is that you need to make sure you're getting the right feedback too, because, and I preach this everywhere I go, if you're giving your book to romance authors and you're writing thrillers, you're going to get very, very different feedback. If you give your thriller book to thriller writers, you're going to get much more useful feedback. If you give it to thriller readers, you'll get an entirely different set of useful feedback, because writers and readers think very differently about a lot of the different mechanics of writing. I'm not going to get into the car analogy. And so,
no, please.
but I think for me, I always enjoyed writing, and the pieces that I did do, I got relatively good feedback on. And that was enough for me to have the ego, have the hubris to be able to go, okay, let's write a story and let's go. And again, early on in my journey, the only reason I wrote a book was because I wanted it on my bookshelf. I wasn't all that bothered about giving it to people. I just wanted to write what I wanted to write. I wanted to give it my best. And that was picked up and done well. But I would say that I'm now at a point in which I know that I can write, provided that I've got the right story, I've got the right pieces together, but also I can tell the difference very specifically between a first draft and a final draft. My first drafts are considerably more messy than my final drafts, tend to stay around the same word count, which is very, very interesting. But there's a reason that last year, the year before, I essentially live wrote When Winter Comes and shared it with people, because I wanted authors to see the behind the scenes. And I've done it before where I've written a short story live in an hour and just invited people to drop in and check it out if they wanted to, and to watch the process. Because there's the adage that I see a lot, which is write drunk, edit sober, or the first draft, write the first draft with the door closed and then carry on with the door open. But that's not always helpful for people, because it'd be very interesting to see people's first drafts versus their final drafts, because that's the whole point of writing. You start with something messy, you put it on paper, and it's never going to be clean, it's never going to be perfect. You have to chip it away, edit, think about it, percolate, go back, tweak, all that kind of stuff. So I'd kind of argue, and this is, me talking myself to the point, it's kind of how I live.
Yeah.
But I guess there's almost a sense of the confidence that I have comes from knowing that it's a process. And that confidence, I'm boring the hell out of Sam.
Yeah.
No, that the confidence comes from the acceptance of the process. It comes from just writing that first draft, because there's no other way to make it happen than to write it. Trusting my editing process to clean it up. Trusting my beta readers to give me honest enough feedback to know if I'm making a big boo-boo with a story. And then being able to publish. So it's a journey. Confidence grows with each book that you publish, but that doesn't negate imposter syndrome and this constant feeling that every time you come to a blank page that you haven't got it anymore, which is a real fun, real inspiring journey for people to know that comes ahead. But I would wholeheartedly say, if you want to find your confidence, be very specific who you give your book to, or even your story or sample, whatever that is. Make sure they have some sort of skin in the game. And also don't just get isolated opinions. If you're going to give your book to one person who is in your genre and they don't like it, that's not enough of a data sample to be able to say definitively whether you can write.
No, that is
give
not
it to 10 people, give it to 20 people, give it to 30 people. The more people you give it to, the more you can actually get an impression of what's going on.
I love that. We used to do this exercise when we would get new headshots. So we started at drama school, and then I kind of followed it through, because as terrifying as it is, it's actually really, really helpful, which is you swap your headshot with a mate, and then you both go out into like a place that's kind of like got good foot traffic, usually outside of a theatre or a cinema at like kicking out time, and you show them this headshot and you say, like, who is this person? Not like, do you know them, but like, look at this photo and tell me what this photo tells you about this person. And then you would do this with like 10, 20, 30, 40, as many people as you could get. And there's always the outliers, but they're not the people you're interested in. There's always a common trend of like, okay, this photo said, because then you know, out of like, you've got 4 or 5 different headshots, which one, like, you don't want to send the one where you look like a bitch or like the caring nurse. Do you know what I mean? You're too close to it, so you can't see it. And it sounds very similar with this, you give it to as many people as possible. I would just like to raise one point before we move on to the next question, and that's this. You said you look at it as a process and you trust your editing, you trust your betas. At what point did you trust your editing? Do you know what I mean?
After going through that process, the first full-time round, there's always going to be the question of, is this right? It's the first time you're doing it. You're always gonna wonder. Once you start getting those good reviews come in, once you get that good feedback, that helps. It's not the answer, no. But it definitely helps. So that's kind of why I push the people to go through to the point of finish, to the point of publish, because it's not going to be the be all and end all if you put a book out and it doesn't do as well as you want it to. There's the unpublished button. There is, pen names and all these different options to move your career forward and to not have that mark against you. You could have 5 people give you bad reviews and you'll be like, oh crap, this isn't fun. And it's not, but you learn something. And then, you find one of the other 7.8 billion people in the world outside of those 5. I mean, even with my writing, I have continuous themes that I'm working on, in which quite a few of my different books, people talk about it being quite slow starting. And so with each book that I write, I try and work on that balance of finding the hook, finding a setup in a way that works for the story. And it's not a constant thing that pops up, but every now and then it does. And so it's things like that, where if it's enough of a theme that it pops up on a few occasions, pay attention to that, have a look at it and see if there's anything you can work from that. But also at the end of the day, it might just be a few loud people's opinion. Yeah,
that's generally the people that have those kind of opinions are normally louder. And yeah,
but I will just add as well, just one more thing tied into this. I wholeheartedly do not believe that writing is just an inborn talent.
No,
that you are a writer or you aren't. I have seen people who have struggled with dyslexia all through school and their early life come out and write fantastic books. Because if you are dyslexic, you can get a fantastic editor. If you have no fingers, you can get someone else to type for you. You can use your voice. There's 1,000 different ways to type and to make a story. And as long as you're willing to put the effort into your craft and to work at it, you might not hit it right first time, but you can learn, you can keep getting better. And that's truly where progress and success lies, is just the willingness to keep going.
Yeah, talent versus skill, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's move on to the beautiful Meg. And she wants to know, how do you find the right pressure point to motivate yourself? So not so little that you procrastinate and don't work, but not so much you freeze in fear and don't create.
I laughed when I saw Meg post this question because it seemed very, very, very timely. When I know, I'll tell you. Can you just read the question again, just to get the phrasing for me?
So how do you find the right pressure point to motivate yourself? Not so little you procrastinate and don't work, but not so much you freeze in fear and don't create. So where is that sweet spot for you? Or where would you like it to be?
So I think it does come back to this idea of seasonality and sort of, in the words of Sasha Phoenix-Burn, cycles in which, for me, I definitely do have this kind of inhalation, exhalation of workload. And what I try to do is put enough in my calendar that it keeps me motivating, it keeps me rolling, keeps me busy. But every now and then that does load into a lot of things. So for example, I mean, the last 2 weeks have been very, very full on for me with writing a book, some fun in personal times, like a stag doing things, a conference, a bunch of stuff getting ready for the mastermind for activated authors. And so it has been really intense. But I have pushed myself hard and run ragged, knowing that, I will be able to exhale slightly after all that's done, give myself a bit more of a break, reassess. But I think one of the things I'm looking at going forward is being very, very specific on how many projects I'm running, how they balance around sort of pre-standing appointments. Because I think one of the difficulties of, I mean, any job, not even just, self-employed, is balancing your fixed static appointments and the things that are regular fixtures in your week with the stuff that is fluid and the stuff that is growth and developing. And so I'm just freezing because I've realized there might be a unit in the coaching thing that I'm doing that's on this, and there was something that might be useful, but I can't quite remember what it was. If I remember, I'll come back to it. But it's you have your weekly things that almost form your baseline for how you run your business. I think it's important to understand what the minimum viable is for you, and to spring off that and then use whatever capacity is remaining to then inject the rest of what it is that you're working on. And it's hard to define what that looks like for everyone, because obviously everyone's different, everyone's plates are different sizes. And for me, I tend to find that for about 2 or 3 weeks I will go hard, and then for a week or two I'll ease up. I am looking at a few systems at the minute just to work out programs and fixtures going forward, and projects and things that I want to work on. But I know that, personally for me, one thing that I have been massively lacking in is leaving proper time to create for myself, and also better planning for ghostwriting projects around the other stuff that I'm doing, which is lucky because all that fades off the tail soon. So honestly, I don't know. Like all I can do is kind of speak around that one. It's the motivation comes from the purpose. The motivation comes from the why, and taking time to sit still for a bit, remember why it is you're doing what you're doing, and that should give you the fire to keep moving forward, especially when times are hard. I do believe that every now and then we need to have that injection of hard deadline in order to remind us of what we're capable of, and just to give us that little extra push. Like, for example, the last 2 weeks I've done an insane amount of stuff that a couple of weeks ago I definitely wouldn't, because reasons. But if you know your baseline, if you know your why, if you can remember what it is you're doing it all for, that helps. And then just work in cycles. And another thing that I came across recently that might be interesting to look into, but isn't something that I've fully investigated, is I was listening to the Entrepreneurs on Fires podcast, and I cannot remember off the top of my head which guest it was. I wonder if I can do this while I talk. But the guest on that was basically talking about the different cycles of work patterns between men and female biologies, in the sense of...
Because I didn't know whether you would have the comfort level to go there.
Why?
Well, because, like, let's be honest, historically, men have been like, is it because it's your time of the month? And it's not been received well. I was gonna speak on that, but now
there we go.
Spotlight's on you. Talk to me about menstruation, Dan.
So I think, here we go. The episode is called Do Less, Have More, How to Reduce Your Work Hours While Making More Money, with Kate Northrup. And she has a book called, is it this one? It's called Do Less by Kate Northrup. And so in that book, she essentially talks about the different biological cycles of men versus women. So men traditionally, hormonally, have a 24-hour hormone cycle in which, we cycle through all the different things. That's kind of it, like day to day. And, given the state of how patriarchy built Western civilization, most of what we do is built on a day-to-day cycle. That's just kind of how work works. What she talks about in that is roughly the 28-day sort of female cycle, in which, hormones cycle in different phases. And she goes into quite a lot of detail in that about the different phases and how they can work with different parts of the creative process. So, for example, if you're in, again, I don't know the specifics of this, but having listened to the podcast, there was a lot of value in that for people who are interested. But like in phase 1, that might lend better to ideation and just planning. phase 3 might be better towards, working hard and just actually creating and doing the thing. And it's worth acknowledging the part that biology and hormones and everything play in what we do and how we work. And so that may be something that we want to look into, Meg, just to potentially trial a few things and understand. I know that I won't say their name, but I know someone else in Activated Authors has spoken a lot about how they've noticed that their patterns tend to move with the moon cycles.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense, right? They're monthly.
Yeah. So there's some stuff in that could be taken away. But one slightly tangential, but definitely kind of on the point as well. One thing that I keep coming up a lot against lately is there is no right way to do any of this.
No.
Like we can find our best versions of what works for us at that time, but no one ever looked down from the clouds and told us that this is how things had to be. So just finding what works for you, just trialing, making errors, working out what works, keeping track of everything else, and pushing it from there. How I work now is vastly different to how I did 3 or 4 years ago.
Your circumstances are vastly different.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm vastly older and more weathered.
We've spoken about this, haven't we?
Uh-huh.
I do think it's important that you bring that up, though, because, I mean, the patriarchy has a lot to fucking answer for, quite frankly. And I won't get on my soapbox too long because I'm aware this is about people wanting your answers to their questions. But while we're here, women have been so fucking, like, the disservice is criminal, because you look at any kind of thing where, so like fitness, for example, you go to a trainer and, like you say, you have a hormonal cycle. They're like menstruation, ovulation, and then like before and after. I'm sure they've got names. I don't know them. Why would I? The patriarchy. But it does affect how you are. And because of the way we've been brought up, we've been constantly told that that's because we're weak. It's a weakness of ours. Like that, we are doing a disservice to others, instead of people going, okay, well, how about we just look at humanity as a whole? And so, yeah, I think that's really important that you bring that up. And I will definitely be listening to that episode, and I will try to find it and pop it in the show notes.
Sweet. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that was very short for me. Okay, Renee would like to ask you, you have so many irons in the fire. How do you keep them all straight? You time block, right? I would like to see your schedule for like a week or a month. I'm not a very good planner. I need examples because there is so much and I'm not even you. So the question of that is, how do you keep all your irons in the fire straight? Dan.
So annoyingly, I think more so for Renee, I don't properly time block, not as rigidly as I used to anyway. I do have a sense of when I want to get different tasks done and roughly the sort of time, but like I've said earlier, like it comes and goes in phases. Sometimes I'm much more strict and sometimes I'm a little bit more looser. But I mean, there's a couple of parts of this. So I use Google Calendar a hell of a lot for everything in my life. I have 4, potentially 5 different email addresses that I use to organize different things, whether that's stuff that's specifically Devil's Rock, Activated Authors, myself, my personal life. And there's another calendar in there somewhere. And so
all the invitations.
Yeah, all the invitations and things. So my calendar is pretty much very color coded to help me understand what things I'm doing and how they're weighted. Mm-hmm. One thing that I'm going to be looking at doing more, because I'm actually just flicked over to look at my calendar now. I've got all the things in my calendar that are kind of like blocked out and stuff, but up at the top where it's got the all day stuff, that's almost like agenda items. I really want to use that more to remind me of things I'm doing. So Google Calendar is one tool that I use to manage and to track things. And then Notion, as people in Activated Authors are definitely aware of. We have that workshop up on the dashboard. But Notion, I've recently revamped my main dashboard for my author stuff because I wanted to simplify it and just get the things that were working very, very top and present. So just kind of talking through, and I won't share it because there's stuff on here that's a bit sensitive, but I've got things like my goals at a glance, so I can unfold and see what my quarterly goals are, my yearly goals are. It's got like my mass to-do list on there as well. Every day I've got a section which is today's top 3 priorities. So it's stuff that, you know, if I get these 3 things done, that's a day 1. And then I've got kind of like a mash of my daily to-dos, my monthly to-dos, one-off tasks, as well as sort of a bunch of links that lead off to the different projects I'm working on. It works for me. It's very, very individualized to how I work and the things that I do. But honestly, I think there's how am I trying to say this? I do too much is the flat bottom truth. And part of the reason I do too much is partly necessity and partly because I don't know any other way. No, it's just because I am very, very eager and willing to help. But my life circumstances are very different to other people's. I do want to reduce that. And I think that sometimes when you do a lot, and you know, when I tell people I wrote 26 books in 2020, there's almost an idealization and a glorification of what that is. And, you know, it arguably it is impressive in what was achieved. But for me, it's not a sustainable thing. And I don't think it's something that people should be looking at trying to achieve. So I do a lot. So I do a lot, but then also at the same time, like I'm very, very careful as much as I can be to make sure that the things that I'm doing are the things that matter. And often for me, the things that matter are giving face time and giving value to the people in the community and in terms of the other stuff I do. So it'll look like I'm very present. It'll look like I'm very there because I'm very, very focused at doing those things that put me in those places where I am being seen. Whereas it might be that a few years ago, I was spending much more time doing all this admin stuff rather than being so visible and being so, visible with people seeing that, you know, I'm doing a lot of different things. So if anything, you know, I run my calendar well. I use Notion very, very specifically for me to keep track of stuff. But at the same time, I do too much and I'm working to reduce that. But some of that, there's like an age-old thing that is happening with my journey, which I'm hoping this is one of the final milestones, in that when you become self-employed, again, there's almost like this accordioning of things to enable you to reach the next level. Like I could have very easily left my day job, ghostwritten, and just wrote 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 words a day. And that was it. That was in those first few months, that was all I did. And God damn it, life was beautiful and easy. But that's not what I want to do forever. And so in order to reach somewhere else, I have to take on more to then account for what I'm losing, to then take to that next thing. So I'm very much in this transitional phase. And, you know, I have been for the past 1.5 to 2 years, which I'm closing in on the end of, in which I have been doing all of the things to allow me to do much less of the things, because that's just a necessity. Like it's very, very different to if you're in a salary job in which you can finish a salary job and go into a different salary job. And there's just that transfer of work, because I have to make up for any loss. I have to make sure that that's sustainable. I have to inflate so I can then reduce. And it's a whole weird thing. But yeah, I don't know if I answered that. How do I keep everything straight? Mostly Notion. Every few weeks I tend to have a bit of a purge in which I'll take a day to sit down, really look at what I'm doing against my big goals and what I want to try and achieve, make sure things are aligned, because it happens so quickly and it happens so easily that people will message you, things will come up, and before you know it, you're working on something that's so tangential to what you said you were going to do. And I am someone that gets excited by shiny new pennies, so I really have to work hard to make sure that doesn't happen so much. So that does get me in trouble a fair bit. But yeah, every few weeks I'll sit down, I'll purge, or I'll do it on the whiteboard, or in a notepad in a cafe, and have conversations with friends as well. Like, it helps having you on board, because I can spout ideas at you, talk about different things, and you can be like, yeah, but you said you're going to do this, and I was like, yeah, but that was like 3 days ago. So that also helps, having someone on board, like an accountability partner, to bounce the ideas off of, to just kind of hold you to account for the things you're doing.
Yeah. If calendar blocking is something you are really looking at, Renee, and you already probably know what I'm going to say, because I recommend this video. But there's a really, I think she's got a couple now, actually. Amy Landino, who is a entrepreneur, and one of the things she does, she has a YouTube channel, and she's got a few videos there on time blocking, and she's very strategic with how she does it. And the videos she shares the screen, and she shows you exactly how to like set up the like step by step, and gives examples and things like that. So if you're wanting to look into calendar blocking, that could be something. You
did recommend that to me, and it was very useful.
Yeah.
Is it Gatlu, her catchphrase?
Yes. God, how life you want. Yeah, that's her company now. It's called Gatlu.
Yeah. Get after the life you want.
Yeah, love her. Okay, I just tried to tuck my hair behind my ear for people that.
How's that working out for you?
And just went everywhere. Okay, right. So we're going to dive into a big question now. And I'm going to read it in its entirety.
Yes. I'll bite my tongue in that time. Ow.
I mean, don't literally bite your tongue.
I just did, but it's fine.
Right, because I want to give this, because this is a big old question. So Eden asks, how do you interact with an author's work when they have done or did something reprehensible? What made me think of this was at a Quaker meeting I attended over Zoom recently, someone quoted J.K. Rowling, and it made my skin crawl. Now, for those who don't know or don't remember, in the middle of the first lockdown, J.K. Rowling went on a massive anti-trans tirade on Twitter for no apparent reason beyond being a hateful prune, a position which she has seemed to have doubled down on over the last couple of years, all while society, mostly straight and cis, have sort of shrugged their shoulders and gone, funny old world, innit? Anyway, let's go see the new Harry Potter film and give her all of our money. I know I'm exaggerating, but not by much. On the other hand, I still read, albeit rarely, bits of Harry Potter Lovecraft, which was shockingly racist even for the time, and a bit less rarely. Marcus Aurelius, who wrote Meditations while literally leading an army whose sole purpose was to commit a genocide and ethnic cleansing in Germania. I'm just curious about how you deal with authors being humans, and more importantly, not very nice humans from time to time, especially when those authors like Rowling are still alive, and how that affects your consumption of their work. Sorry if this is a bit dark for a Sunday afternoon. Now, that's a big old question. And I think if we boil it all down, it is the age-old question of, can you separate art from artist?
Yeah.
Is that your answer?
It's just that simple. No. Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to have a full answer to this. I'll have some form of perspective, and obviously everyone has their own, but there are a million examples inside of reading, music, film, of people who have done reprehensible things and yet still sell and are very, very visible. You could ask the question, why is Michael Jackson still played on the radio, and why is R. Kelly not? And there are obviously perspectives on that. But I think what it really boils down to is it's a very personal question, and it lies a lot on your core values, your core mission in life, and what it is that affects you, because what affects you will not affect 1,000 other people. And humans are very, very complicated. We have our own lenses of how we think, of how we move, of how we act, of how we treat other people, and what emphasis we put onto things. I actually, interestingly, had quite an interesting conversation with an author friend this weekend about sort of different forms of sensitivity in writing. And obviously, with horror being what it is, it plays very much with taboo and the borderlines of things that many people don't write about, and it triggers a lot of people, and there's a lot of questions around that. And we had very different perspectives on that in general, because I am very much surrounded by lots of people from various communities who it does impact, and it does, echo in the bubble that I'm in, versus the person I was talking to who it doesn't impact at all, because their friends are very different to my friends, their family is very different to my family, their lives very different to mine. So it comes down to you on a personal level, I think, more than anything else, and how much you can separate the art from the artist in those situations. I mean, I've had people kind of roll their eyes at me for the fact that I had Will Smith's biography on the shelf behind me, and then he did something, I don't remember what, but like I've always been a massive Will Smith fan, huge Will Smith fan. Read his autobiography, and I'll be honest, it actually put me off him a little bit. It kind of colored him slightly different to how I viewed him. And then, like, not 3 days later, he slapped Chris Rock on stage. And he sat there in the audience, he went through the whole thing, and he got his award, he was standing ovation, all that kind of stuff, and it was kind of shrugged under the carpet. A week later, somebody did the same thing at a Dave Chappelle concert and gets beaten up by security backstage. It's a real tough one to answer, because for me, I'm now in a position in which I don't want to actively support Will Smith, because it doesn't in any way, I can't fathom the rationale or the reason or the thought behind it, and it doesn't vibe with the energy I want to put out in the world. Similarly to what Eden says, I have Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and I am massively interested in the Stoic philosophy and all the things that he has to say. I think there's immense value in the lessons that he tells. But another thing we've got to also understand is that times change, times move on, and what is okay 300, 400, 5,000 years ago isn't going to be the same as it is today. So we can't view historical context through the lens of what it is today. We can only take what we know, what we think we can learn from the lessons, and move forward. Like, I lost, I say a friend, I fell out with an acquaintance because I read Hitler's Mein Kampf when I was 19 or 20. I posted it on Facebook that I'd read it. Nothing, I didn't like review it, just like 5 stars, fantastic read, well done Hitler. No, I read it as part of a challenge, and one of the categories was a banned book, or it wasn't a banned book, it was along those lines.
Yeah.
And the reason I read it was because I am incredibly interested in understanding, not empathizing, in understanding. And Adolf Hitler, I need no introduction. But I have always been incredibly curious to understand how a person can reach that level of influence and that level of power. And you read that book and you understand it. Like, evil hides in the face of good. And a modest, humble little painter from
Austria.
Yeah, somewhere in Austria. That's going to escape me now. But yeah, a humble little painter from Austria became like a very, very infamous dictator. How does that happen? And similarly, I've watched Donald Trump documentaries to understand him. I've watched the Jimmy Savile stuff. I've watched all these different things, because you have to learn lessons from the past in order to understand the future, and to know, what really is right and wrong. And this does kind of play a little differently when it comes to fiction and like music as well. But I mean, all of that to say that it's I don't know that there's an answer for it. It is just simply down to you, what you can withstand, what you can't, and where you go from there. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that don't understand the depths of the hurt that J.K. Rowling has imparted on the community, because they don't live that life, they don't see that experience, there are very particular reasons why I can definitely understand where this question is coming from, within my family, within my friends. Not everyone has that experience, and the sad truth of life is that that's, the world is a kaleidoscope in which everyone sees a different color, and it's difficult. I'm sure you not to put you on the spot, but you might have a thing or two to add on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think as with everything in life, there is a spectrum. So, for example, I was internally smiling when he was talking about Will Smith and then talking about Marcus Aurelius, because obviously, like, what Will Smith did was go up on stage and slap someone, and what Marcus Aurelius did was genocide.
Yes.
So vastly different things, right? Vastly different things. Like, let's just really underline that. But as you say, when Marcus Aurelius was alive, it wasn't seen genocide in the way that we see it now. People were going out and conquering. That was life. You went out, the Romans, the Greeks, hello, like, colonization. And it was kind of, I mean, obviously not if you're the ones being fucking invaded or killed off. You weren't like, oh, well, this is just how it is. But it was a very, very different time. And I think with, like, the internet and all things like that, our evolution has really, for better and worse, skyrocketed. Like, humanity has never been pretty. We've always had, like, jagged, disgusting edges. But we've really seen the best and the worst of people in a way that wasn't available to us before. Like, news has been taken out of the hands of newscasters, and obviously there's real pros and cons to that. But I think with that, you get to learn about issues that you might not have understood before. For example, if we're talking about Rowling, like, I didn't know what a trans person was when I was growing up. I mean, I don't think I saw someone that was not a white person until I was in my teenage years. And it's thanks to my mum, who, like, preached, unless a person is an arsehole to you, you better be nice to them. That I had that. I think, like I say, spectrum. So there is a difference between someone having done something, say, like 10 years ago. Look at oh my God, Kevin Hart, right? He'd already apologized. He wasn't doing it anymore. He'd learned his lesson. He knew at the time he'd fucked up. And then it's dragged up again 10 years later. Well, that doesn't stop me enjoying Kevin Hart. If anything, the way he handled that situation, I respected it more. Because if there isn't space for evolution and growth, then what's the fucking point?
100%.
Having said that, there is a big difference between that and like felonious crime. There is a big difference between making an ignorant joke 10 years ago that you have learned from and you have apologized for and you've put in steps to become a better person. There's a big difference between that and R. Kelly, who I won't go into. Like, I'm sure most people know. If you don't, trigger warning if you look that shit up, because it's disgusting. There's a big difference between that kind of thing, and then when you look at, I'm trying to think, what were they called? Is it the Lost Prophets?
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, pretty sure, yeah.
there is a huge spectrum, and at the really fucking shit end, at the really disgusting end, you have things that are reprehensible, truly reprehensible. And like, for example, Space Jam was one of my favorite movies growing up. I fucking love that film. I've still got it on VHS. Now, one of the opening scenes in that film is little Mike playing basketball, and his dad's asking him to come inside, like, come on. And he's like, no, I want to keep playing. And the track that's played over that is I Believe I Can Fly.
Is that one of my childhood songs?
Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it makes me so uncomfortable because it's separating the art from the artist. When something is that disgusting, the art takes on a new meaning. Mm-hmm. You listen to those lyrics knowing who that person is. It's not the same piece of art, I would argue.
No.
Now, I also think if we're going to look at the difference between people that are alive and people that are no longer alive, you have to think of money. So for me, for example, I can't go near Rolling. I am a het cis white woman, so it doesn't affect me personally in the sense of, I'm not part of the trans community. I'm not part of the LGBTIA plus community really at all. I know I have family members, I have friends that are part of that community. And I know the damage that has done beyond like it being, insensitive, beyond like just the wounds that has inflicted. And, just I won't go into the whole fucking, because like it's ridiculous, and it's still there because, as Eden says, she's really doubling down on the fact. Now, I won't go see the new films. I won't buy any merchandise. I won't do anything. And I was a huge Harry Potter fan, not the biggest there is, but a big. And like for me personally, I can't go near it now because again, it takes on a new meaning. And you see things in a different light. So I'm completely with you in the sense of it has to be a personal decision. But for me personally, it is about where on the spectrum that lies. Mm-hmm. And am I helping them by continuing to indulge in art that they have made? So like, for example, if I wanted to buy a piece of Harry Potter merchandise, I'm sending her money. Mm-hmm. And I refuse to do that. So I do think it's a huge question. And
it's massive. Yeah.
It's so complicated because the truth is there are people that will happily separate the art from the artist if they really like the thing. Like I'm obsessed with Christina Aguilera. She'd have to do some real dark shit. But there is a line, and that line has to be, it's an internal thing. But anyway.
And it's just to kind of add a couple more ideas on that is, we are responsible, and we can choose the things that we consume and the things that we don't, and the things that we don't make a message in the same sense that, it's people don't realize the customer always has the greatest power. So if everyone in the world suddenly stopped buying Harry Potter stuff, that would have an impact. But we can't control other people, and that's way, how am I trying to say this? Wearing that burden can be really heavy when we don't always have the power to change, unless we can band together, we can lobby, we can do things, we can work together. It takes a lot to take that leadership role and to do that. And I have huge admiration for people that do. But you got to look at like the reality of, things like over in Russia, like there are people that support currently what's going on over there. It's hard to talk about this without getting too sort of entrenched in politics and things, but there's a whole half of the world, arguably, that believes in very, very different ideals to our ideals. And who's to say what's right and what's wrong? I mean, we can obviously speak from our own personal experience, and I know where I sit on that spectrum, but yeah, I think I think we'll round it off there. It's hard, especially like I know a lot of people who are using this example more than anything. Like Harry Potter has had such a big impact on modern culture beyond like it encouraging an entire generation of kids reading, the love of story, of fantasy, all that kind of stuff. So this situation holds a very, very different candle to someone who hasn't had that kind of mark. But yeah.
And just very quickly, I think that is one of the biggest things that has hurt, is that like it was the home for misfits. It was the home for people that didn't feel like they felt they could fit anywhere else. There was the line, right? Hogwarts is always waiting to welcome you home. And then you find out this shit and it's like, no, Hogwarts is there to welcome some people home. And that's what I mean. Like, once you know the truth, you can't see it in the same way, or at least I can't with that particular example.
Go to Minas Tirith. It's nicer there, but I mean, yeah.
Let's not do a deep dive on Tolkien.
Yes.
Moving on. Okay, so we've got a couple more questions left. And
just super quickly, sorry, I do want to say thank you for asking that question, Eden.
Yeah, that's a big fucking question, and it takes like a lot to ask that kind of question. Okay, so we've got 2 questions left. Now, I'm aware this episode is going to be a little bit longer. Number one, because I talk way more than I probably should do in this setting, but also that was a big question, and I feel like it deserved the answer. So 2 questions left. Emmy Grange would like to know, how are you having fun / gathering energy and inspiration?
Oh, that would have been a very different answer 5 days ago. So full transparency, I don't know that I have been properly for a long time. And by a long time, roughly around 2020, when something, I can't remember what happened.
That's like 20 years.
No, I am. So as mentioned at the beginning, I've recently come back from Chilicon and spent 4 days around arguably my people. And for the last 3 years, that hasn't been an option. Also a little bit before that, because of the nature of this type of business, lots of the people that I'm friends with live very, very far away. So it's kind of, it's difficult to socialize with other writers and do that kind of thing. But, I just spent 4 days with 100, 150 horror writers, of like, including some of the best in the world. Went out, had fun, spoke about horror, very, very deep level, and just had all those conversations. And what was great about that was, and this is a weird thing that I've kind of, I think, realized recently, is, and as is always when I say stuff, as a disclaimer that I don't mean this in a negative way. So the last 2 writers' conferences I went to were 20 Books to 50K London and 20 Books to 50K Edinburgh, which I loved and I had a fantastic time on. But what I've realized after this weekend is they're not actually writing conferences, they're publishing conferences. And what this was for me was a writing conference. And it was not just that, but it was a writing conference full of like horror writers. And it sounds so stupid to like say that out loud, but I went to 20 Books London and I didn't meet another horror author. I went to 20 Books Edinburgh and I met one other horror author. And there was something really almost like, I don't know, you almost felt like a pioneer in indie horror being like that representative. But people were meeting up and there was like groups of 15, 20 fantasy writers, thriller writers, romance writers, and then there was the horror writer. And I don't know why, I didn't even like think of it. And then this weekend, everywhere you look, it was a horror writer, and they know what you're reading and they know what you're watching and they know what you love, and you have these fantastic conversations. And so not only that, but also it was, I've not really been to that many big in-person things since the pandemic, for obvious reasons,
Yep.
Yeah, just the fact that it was a pandemic. On top of that, like, I've got a kiddo to look after, so I don't really want to put myself at risk in a place in which I then have to isolate myself however many days and not see him. And I've come away just, knackered at this point. I've not rested properly, but like transformed. Sort of, it really has pulled me back to everything that I loved about getting into writing in the first place, and has kind of motivated and inspired that again, which is the fire I think I've been looking for a long time. And that was just fun. Like, it was work in the sense of it was about writing, but it was just fun. And like, they had panels, they had people you can go and listen to, and it was so relaxed. It was essentially myself, Luke Condor, John Crinnan, and Dan Howarth in an Airbnb, and it was just relaxed. We went to things we wanted to go to. We met up, then went for food, then we bumped into other horror authors, and kind of just went out and had drinks, and it was just very, very loose and relaxed. And I think I need more of that in my life. I need to find more places where this happens for fun, because it was fun, it was refreshing, and it filled the well in a very, very big way. I came back with so many more books than I thought I was going to. So that's one way, is getting away from the computer, meeting up with people, and not just that, but people that inspire you and are just fantastic, friendly people. Like, I'd only met Luke out of the four of us, well, and myself.
I meet myself every day in the mirror.
Yeah, but I've had calls with Dan and John over the years, and you know, been in different forums and known for ages. But like, it was nice, just all of us being genuinely just nice, calm people. We got on really well. It was all like, we're all so like-minded that there wasn't a point of discomfort around the event or sharing quarters or anything. It was just fantastic. And so that's one way, is to charge and do that. In terms of other ways to have fun, just it kind of on a similar vein, I've been increasingly trying to make time to see friends and to do more things outside of writing. So this long weekend, going to the caravan, which is like my parents own a caravan on the sort of northeastern border of the UK. I'm going there for a few days with my mum and my dad and my sister and Bailey, and just kind of getting away, trying to unplug a bit from technology and just have fun. And I think the third thing really is just trying new, weird, different things. Just seeing what I can do to learn to try. Like, I've got I've been looking into like crochet lately and knitting and things like that, just because it fascinates me. I don't understand how it's done, and that hurts my mind, and so I want to know how.
On knitting.
Yeah, so I want to potentially give that a go, not like take it up as a full hobby, but just learn enough to understand it.
I expect to scarf.
Yeah, you'll see me like in 3 months' time in just a massive shawl that I've made for myself. And also, one other thing I've been looking into lately is Warhammer, just because I like the idea of having something that is away from technology, that is just focused attention, and there's some skill to it. And I'm a big fan of like Lord of the Rings, and they have Lord of the Rings sets, and like, I like dragons and monsters and stuff, so stuff like that. So just a mix, really. But if anything, as I say, this weekend has kind of upped the priority list, the priority of the items of finding more fun and striking that balance stronger.
Yeah. I think it's such a difficult thing. I mean, for me anyway, it was difficult and remains difficult for different reasons before the pandemic. But like, we're still talking like, you know, the pandemic's over. It's not really over. It's just it's manic.
Quieter.
Yeah, it's quieter. People got bored of it, and so the politicians were like, oh, well, it's probably quiet down a bit now. And weirdly enough, as soon as like Boris got outed as being an absolute silly man, it's got real quiet. But I think for people who enjoyed socializing beforehand, there's a reticence, there's real fear still. You know, like, people still on instinct are queuing, you know. But yeah, I think particularly if you are extrovert leaning, even just being around people is key.
Yeah, I found that I'm also coming to terms with how my idea of socializing has changed.
Interesting.
Because I used to be very much bars and like drinking and that kind of stuff. Not like heavy, but enough to just get a bit of a buzz on and chat to friends. And now, like, I really do just get a big buzz off of just hanging out with people, having like a really good conversation. Like, I'm in my 30s now, so that's changed. But owning that. So, you know, I went on a stag do recently, and I didn't feel the pressure to have to keep up with the lads because they didn't vibe with me, and that's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I know much better who I am now to know what I do and don't want to do, and what effect that if I do the things I don't want to do will have on me, then I'm not going to be able to do the things that I want to do. Eloquent.
Yeah. I just very quickly, when you were saying it was you, Crinan, Condor, and Howarth, is that how you say your last name? It's so funny because the first thing that came into my head was Joe Lycett going, lads!
Yeah. It's not that crowd.
That's what I mean. It's like, it was Joe Lycett I heard saying that point. Like, it's just, yeah. I imagine that would have been like an extremely chill, like, awesome.
Oh, it was. It was.
Okay, so our final question, got my old ladies back on. I say it like I don't wear them all the time. The reason is because of this.
The shine, the glare.
Yeah, everywhere I look. So Ara would like to know, what was your favorite thing about writing when you first got into it, and has this changed with where you are now? And if it has changed, in what way? These are all very tiny questions, I would like to add.
Oh, very big questions as well.
Look, you put in a post and ask people to ask you anything.
Yeah, it's self-inflicted.
Salty about the fact that they're doing what you asked them to.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Oh, unbelievable. Yeah, I will do.
Get your old lady glasses back on.
Well, I'm going to try and... Oh, yeah, no. Just a black blur. Okay, so what was your favorite thing about writing when you first got into it, and has this changed with where you are now? And if it has changed, in what way?
I don't think it has changed. It's evolved, it's grown. But I think at its core, I've always enjoyed painting pictures with words. So when I first started writing, it is the descriptive side of stuff that I do really, really enjoy. Like,
that'll be the Tolkien fan in you.
That'll be the Tolkien fan in me. But I don't necessarily even just mean like the written description. I mean, like, you know, a set of dialogue can paint a picture based on what is said and what is unsaid, and how you kind of script that and put that on the page. Yeah, I remember writing Sins of Smoke, and the opening scene of that is a man in a confessional booth. And I really liked painting the early morning sunrise and the motes of dust filtering around, and sort of the different fragments of color coming off the stained glass. I really like building a picture in people's heads, and having a bit of sort of mysticism to it as well. I think that's partly the reason that I don't really often write very contemporary modern stuff that is close to like where I live. I feel like I can write, you know, situations of people just, I don't know, walking down the street or whatever, but there'd have to be something a bit more intriguing, a bit more colorful that I'd have to add to it, just to elevate some of what is happening. And, you know, horror does give you that freedom to do that, because horror is very much a theme and a tone. And so you can take just a normal street and add like the darkening clouds, or, you know, someone watching through a window, and they just twist it immediately into this other. And I think that is really what stays with me. When winter comes is a very visceral.
It's acceptable.
Thank you. It's very ominous, colorful. There's magic in the air, even though it's not explicitly sort of described as magic. And I really try to create a feeling. Like, I think the stories that have impacted me most is when people have taken either the ordinary or the sort of extraordinary, and there's that change in the chemistry in your gut with words. Like, you're reading just random shapes on a page, and for whatever reason you feel like sick, or you're laughing, or you're gonna cry. And so I really like the sort of weighty emotional stuff and trying to take people on a journey with their emotions. And the book I'm writing at the minute is possibly the most purple thing I've ever written, but at the same time, I'm really trying to capture an ethereal state and to disorientate and to take the reader on this real kind of mind-bending journey, based around, horror, because that's where the heart is. But it's the people that paint the pictures and leave that impression in your head of something that wasn't there before. So, you mentioned Tolkien. Like, I am a huge Tolkien fan, and I think that's what I've loved about Lord of the Rings, is how rich and detailed the worlds are. Yeah. Read people like Clive Barker and like Ray Bradbury, and their prose is just like, arguably, like, in some ways a bit more archaic now, more so Bradbury than Barker, but like it's the extra senses that get fired up by reading. And I talk a lot about Nick Cutter as well, particularly his book The Troop, because there are so many points in that book where you smell what's going on just through the description. You hear it, you taste it, like, it encompasses all of you. And arguably it's not a normal situation, but it could be. It's like a group of Boy Scouts that go onto an island and then stuff happens. But just the way that it's told, there's almost like a fantastical sort of magical element to it. And so I think I'm still looking for new ways to write that and to capture that magic and to improve my craft, to just make readers feel the stuff that I feel when I read those books.
I love it. Yeah. And I've said this to you privately, but I would say as well, like, now, when I read When Winter Comes, which again is like exceptional.
Just pointing to it for people watching on the YouTube.
It's there too. It's very strange because my brain works very differently. And I hear a lot of writers say, like, I have to imagine it in my head before I can write it. It doesn't work that way with me. It's the same as when I write poetry. It doesn't exist in my brain. It exists in a point between thought and pen. There's like, and I can't, if I try and sit and do it like I can plan out what I want to happen, but I don't see it as this big thing. It just comes out of me. That's just, and so I also then struggle when I'm reading to imagine these big worlds, because it exists between the page in my brain. I don't know how to explain it.
I know what you mean. There's a lot of like interesting research and sort of the connection between visualization and the means of absorption, I guess.
So all of this to say that when I was reading When Winter Comes, I had my first real experience of an actual sense being triggered. And I literally stopped reading to tell you about it because I was so excited. And it's like, it was the fire. And like, as I say it, I can hear it popping because that's how like deeply ingrained in my brain it was. And I had read other of your works before, and I really enjoy your style, how you write. And I'm not a horror fan. So sorry about your also boughts. But I enjoy how you write. I enjoy your horror because it's character driven, and I'm here for that. I can deal with that. Nothing is my brain is saying extraneous, but that's not the word I want. When something is done for effect as opposed for purpose. gratuitous.
There we go.
There's always a reason. But that book really, like, I really enjoyed it. But yeah, just for me, that the fire. I was like, I can fire. Yeah. So
it's really interesting, like the different lines as well that people pick up, because as a writer, you obviously like write words and words and words and words, and
yeah.
in the end it becomes a book. And I had someone else say to me that one of the things they really, really captured sort of visually was as one of the characters was drinking a beer, the foaming of like the foam of the beer on the mustache, on the lips, and it's like you never know what's going to strike with what person. And again, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier with like different people's perception and lenses and kind of how they see the world. And like there are lines that I read in people's books that I'm like, oh my god, it's phenomenal, and I say it to people and they're like, yeah, it's all right. Like it's such a personal thing, both reading and writing. I think there's a beauty in that.
Agreed. And what a perfect place to bring this to a close.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Sam, for playing host and asking the questions.
You are most welcome.
Not sure whether to do the usual spiel at the end that I do for people that want to find out more about Activated Authors, get all of our community situation, our resources and everything else that's going on there. Head on over to activatedauthors.com. We'll have our next Ask Me Anything in a month or so. But for now, goodbye from myself and goodbye from Sam Frost.
Goodbye.
All right, bye, folks.
Activate your energy.